It's so encouraging seeing all the love and fellowship in the room. It'd be nice to get this party started. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Good evening, Mr. McDowell, Mr. Duval, Mr. Badura, Ms. Plow, Ms. Devine. Here. Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mayor Benjamin.
Here, I'm going to ask young Mr. Lawrence O'Connor to come and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and ask folks to please remain standing for Chaplain Billy Bright to return thanks for us, please.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
It's good to be here. Hadn't been here in a while. It's good to see everybody, and welcome to the new members. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we just come to you right now, giving you thanks and praise for this day. Lord, we ask that you just continue to watch over us and put your heavenly arms around us, Lord. And I ask that you just touch everyone here in a special way, Lord, that they know that you exist and you're in their lives. Lord, we ask that you just guide them, just keep them safe, give them the wisdom and knowledge that they need to live a life that is pleasing to you. Lord, again, we just thank you for this time. Lord, we ask that you just clear the hearts and minds of each and every one of the individuals here so that some resolve can be made for the people of Columbia. Lord, I ask that you just especially touch the lives of the council members. Lord, touch their hearts, their minds, their souls, their spirits, and their families, Lord, and the city manager as well, so that they also may be able to make decisions that are not only pleasing to you, but also that will help this city and the employees grow. Lord, we ask these blessings. Amen.
Amen. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we would ask council to adopt the agenda, and if we could remove item, let's see, one item we would like to remove from the consent agenda, item 3. Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Which item?
Thank you.
3. So you're removing it?
I took it.
Well, I'm sorry. Okay, removing from the consent agenda.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. All right, any other amendments? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. McDowell.
Yes.
Mr. Duval.
Aye.
Mr. Badura.
Aye.
Ms. Devine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
At this time, we would ask for any public input related to agenda items.
All right.
Seeing none, we would ask council to approve the minutes
Got a
of
motion.
April 5th, 2016,
So moved.
April 19th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. McDowell. Mr. Duval.
Aye.
Mr. Badura.
Aye.
Ms. Devine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
Council is asked to approve the consent agenda items 2 and 4 through 8.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Move the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. McDowell. Mr. Duval.
Aye.
Mr. Badura.
Aye.
Ms. Devine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
Item 3, council is asked to approve a professional services agreement to provide arts and history services for the city of Columbia.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Move the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. McDowell. Mr. Duval.
Aye.
Mr. Badura.
No.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Ms. Devine.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
At this time, we will move into a period of presentations. I believe there may be a presentation that council would like to take up prior to our additional presentations, Mr. Mayor.
January 28th, 1991. So that means she must have started here at, 12, 13, 14 years old. It is a pleasure to honor our Chief Judge of our municipal court, 25 years of service, Judge Turner. All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just while everybody's getting back seated, just wanted to recognize one thing. Dana has been with the city for 25 years, but I think one thing that I wanted to make sure that we highlighted is the fact that Dana has really come up and worked in various different areas and come up through the ranks. She started in 1991 as an assistant city attorney in the legal department. Then she went to be a housing official in the inspections department. Then she became an administrative advisor in city administration. Then she was the advisor to the city manager. Then she became an assistant city manager, and now is our chief administrative judge. So it's just a clear testament to her dedication to this city and how she's raised through the ranks. And we're so proud and happy to have her here as part of the City of Columbia family.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Mr. Mayor, just as we're celebrating that longevity with Chief Judge Turner, I would ask Mr. Baker to come forward, if you don't mind, and make an additional announcement for council with another one of our employees.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Ms. Wilson, City Manager, I'm pleased to announce the appointment of our Director of Parks and Recreation, Randy Davis. Mr. Davis is Mr. Davis has an extensive background. We met about 7 years ago as he was a professor at Benedict College in recreation programs. Randy has done work on his PhD at Indiana University. We did a national search. We interviewed individuals from California, Ohio, here in the Midlands area, as well as North Carolina. And the committee decided to recommend the appointment of Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis gives us continuity. He is a committed employee to the city. We expect him to be here a long time. He's a young man. So we think that through the process, Mr. Davis was absolutely our best choice.
All right.
So, if there are any questions, we'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, we are looking forward to big things for Mr. Davis.
No, congratulations, Randy. It's been great. I know for everyone, but me working with you the last 6 years, I got here and tried to hit the ground running on some things, and I'm not sure we pulled the skills and drills camp together in 4 weeks or so, and now we're going strong. About 500 kids every year we're serving, and this is good stuff. So congratulations, great hire, Allison.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing us to make that announcement. At this time, we would ask the Honorable Mayor Stephen K. Benjamin to present the Peace Officers Memorial Day Proclamation.
Sure. Whereas Peace Officers Memorial Day and Police Week is observance in the United States that pays tribute to local, state, and federal peace officers who died in the line of duty. And whereas tens of thousands of law enforcement officers from around the world come together in Washington, D.C. to participate in events which honor those that paid the ultimate sacrifice. And whereas during Peace Officers Memorial Day and Police Week, we celebrate those who protect and serve us every minute of every day. And we honor the courageous officers who devoted themselves so fully to others that in the process they laid down their lives. And whereas thanks to law enforcement officers, we have safer streets, stronger communities, and a more secure nation. And whereas the City of Columbia thanks all those who risk their lives every day to protect our world and make it a better place, now therefore I, Stephen K. Benjamin, Mayor of the City of Columbia, along with my fellow members of Columbia City Council, do hereby proclaim May 15, 2016 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in the great city of Columbia. We urge our fellow citizens to recognize and participate in its observance. You can't obviously issue this proclamation without recognizing the great loss that we suffered in this city this past year. And I'm sure Chief Holbrook's happy to accept this on behalf of Officer Case and other men and women all around this country who paid the ultimate sacrifice serving their communities.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, you will also present the Small Business Week proclamation.
And this is one of the few proclamations I actually don't have because I think we presented it yesterday or the day before that. This is Small Business Week, and our team has been doing a great job working with our private sector partners at the Chamber and others, recognizing the hard work that the 15,500 plus small businesses all across Columbia and Richland County do to provide jobs and build communities. Please. Ms. Herbert?
Thank you, and we will not be before you all too long, but of course it's National Small Business Week, and we have a full week of events, and we're really excited because every year this just grows and grows, and it's not just the city's program, but Richland County and the Chamber. We had SCANA involved this year, so it's growing and we really like it. And we did our press conference on Monday at the Chamber, which was where we had the proclamation presented. The Chamber today had a whole day of sessions on doing business with private and public sector or section. EZ, I believe tomorrow, will be unveiling their new lending program. SBA will have their salute to small business that they have annually tomorrow. And NCBA is actually going to be live broadcasting an event for Carolina Colonels on Friday evening. However, the best event that's going on this week is the City of Columbia Small Business Week Conference. We're really excited, number one, because of the new location. We'll be at Spirit Communications Park. And I will say we have really challenged the staff there because this is the first type of conference or event that they've had of this type. So they have worked with us and we have worked with them about getting the logistics straight. We try and get speakers from across the country as well as local. Our morning speaker is going to be Gloria Larkin with Target Gov. She comes out of Maryland, and she's going to talk about creating your most powerful business development tool and effective capability statement. And we realized today in the Chamber's meeting, less than 20% of the people had a capability statement. So that's much needed. And then as our local star, and we've been trying to coordinate with Carolyn Sawyer every year of the conference, and we finally got her on the books. So she'll be our afternoon speaker discussing 6 surefire ways to sell. Our actual keynote, we don't have a keynote speaker this year. We have a keynote conversation, and it'll be hosted by Brian McCockey with Watch Fox. And we thought that it was very important. The reason that we brought it to the stadium, we need people to know that local small businesses participated in building the stadium. So we're going to have a keynote conversation called Small Businesses Building Big Things with the CCEB venue partners. So we will have the partners. We'll also have Mike Daniels to talk about the workforce development. And we'll have our very own Gregory Tucker. Is Gregory here? Our very own Gregory Tucker will be a part of that conversation as well. One of the things we try and do every year is because we don't know everything that needs to be included or what people need to know, so we do a request for presenters. And this year we have a good variety of people that we've chosen. Some of these folks are expert presenters, and some of them may have only presented 2 or 3 times, but it's an opportunity for them to get exposure. So we have Tammy Davis, Taking Your Business from Home Base to Office Space. Pitch Perfect, Angela Geiger. Using crowdfunding to launch your small business is Roy Moorjohn. And When to Hire a New Employee is Matt Body. And 5 HR mistakes that every small business should avoid, Jada Willis. We will be doing our business spotlight that we do every year. And our business spotlight at this time is Chocolate Nirvana Bakery and Cafe. And I believe Mr. Rogers is here with us today. Oh. Right here. And so we're really excited. We're really excited about this particular highlight because we're trying to focus, if you all realize, we're trying to focus on businesses affected by the flood and trying to get their names out. So we had Nebraska's last time, and John's business was really impacted such that he's in a temporary location right now.
Yes.
And do you want to make one comment or anything?
I'm honored to be here, and I'd like to say thank you.
John, I can't believe you came and didn't bring us anything.
Well, we taste tested everything.
I love chocolate.
We taste tested everything to make sure it met the standards of a business spotlight. So we're glad to have John here. And then this year we probably have the most sponsors that we've ever had. I think 15. to the point that we had to cut it off. So we're really excited. And then I did want to give a special thanks in advance, of course, to the OBO team who kept everything going when I was out of the office, and they just are natural team players. And Jerry Lynn and Paul is here. Angelo's here, but it's the whole team. Economic development, Cecil and Ryan always support us. Purchasing, Sandra always helps us. Compliance with UNE and public relations. Tiffany did a great job in helping us line up radio spaces, spots, and interviews. So I'm just really excited and thankful to everyone. Oh, and I forgot, Reverend Dr. Baker. Is Reverend Dr. He'll be doing our prayer as our invocation blessing before lunch, as he always does every year. So we're delighted to have Reverend Dr. Baker to come with us too. Thank you. Anything else? Did I miss anything? And that's it. If you all want to go, Jerry Lynn has passed out flyers. If you all want to come, just let us know and we'll reserve a spot for you. And I won't charge for the ticket. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Day,
All right, thank
I
you.
got you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Any
all.
questions? I'm sorry, any questions?
Ms. Devine.
Not really a question, I just did want to say that your last event, and I don't know what you called it,
Minority Business Opportunity Conference.
yes, that one I've heard just excellent things about it, and then definitely with the team, because I know that was a difficult day for you, but I've heard wonderful things from the small businesses that were in attendance, and so I just thank you for all your thinking outside the box and all the things that y'all are doing to really reach out and pull small businesses in.
Oh, thank you so much.
David?
Appreciate it.
No, I also came by and I thought this year the format was excellent. And
Thank
while
you.
I was in there floating, I heard a number of good comments from the participants, folks that some were from out of town too. So you did a good job.
And that was a citywide effort, I have to say. We had departments from 16 different departments that participated, so we really appreciate the other departments giving us the support and helping us out with that event as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tina.
Our OBO team rocks. There's a citywide
do.
effort, but thank you
They do.
for what you do. Mr. Mayor, are you ready to keep going? Okay, we will now have the Honorable Mayor Stephen K. Benjamin present the National Drinking Water Week proclamation.
Sure. Whereas water is our most valuable natural resource, and whereas only tap water delivers public health protection, fire protection, support for our economy, and the quality of life we enjoy, whereas any measure of a successful society, low mortality rates, economic growth and diversity, productivity, and public safety are in some way related to access to safe water, and whereas we are all stewards of the water infrastructure upon which future generations depend, and whereas each citizen of our community is called upon to help protect our source waters from pollution, to practice water conservation, and to get involved in our local water issues. We're proud to proclaim May 1st through 7th of this year as National Drinking Water Week. We're making significant strides forward in stewardship of our rivers and certainly in dramatically improving our water and sewer infrastructure. We will continue to do that all across this great city. Is someone going to accept this on behalf okay, fantastic. Thank you. I will say whoever drafted the proclamations this week is not very long-winded, which is pretty awesome. Usually they're like 20 pages long. I mean, whoever drafted these.
Collectively, you have several to present, so that's a good thing, right? And the last but not least, National Preservation Month proclamation, the Honorable Mayor Stephen K. Benjamin.
Sure. Amy's probably going to help me with this one. Historic preservation is a effective tool for economic and sustainable development, tourism promotion, community revitalization, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. And whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and all ethnic backgrounds, and whereas it's important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that have shaped us as a people, and whereas this marks the 50th anniversary of the National Historic Preservation Act, and the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service. Now, therefore, I, Stephen K. Benjamin, Mayor of the City of Columbia, along with my fellow members of City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2016 as National Preservation Month in the great city of Columbia, and urge my fellow citizens to recognize and participate in its observance. So, congratulations. Amy, please. And I would say we are excited. All the great work that's happening across the city, and it's one thing to see it, and it's another thing to be a part of it, and it's something to tell the story and to compare notes with some of our colleagues all around the country. And I will tell you that the City of Columbia and the people in this room are leaders in preserving these special spaces and making sure we create an environment where people realize that historic preservation is economic development. It is cultural development, and and you're doing a fantastic job. So please, I know you have a presentation to make.
I do indeed, and thank you. I mean, you really lead from the top with historic preservation, and we appreciate your efforts greatly. As part of Preservation Month, we also do our Mabel Paine Award every year. And this is an award that we give that celebrates preserving the city's architectural heritage and individuals who make that happen. Mabel Paine was a City of Columbia employee who single-handedly directed preservation efforts here in the 60s when the preservation movement got underway. And she regularly appeared before City of Columbia's Historical and Cultural Buildings Commission and researched buildings, fought demolition, did all the things we're still doing today. Her most notable achievement was perhaps saving the Robert Mills House from demolition, which is an important building in Columbia. Today, the City of Columbia's Design Development Review Commission, the legacy of that former commission, still has purview over landmarks and districts today. So I'm very pleased to announce our Mabel Paine Award winner is Dr. John Bryan. He's here with us tonight. I might note that Dr. Bryan was our Mabel Paine Award winner last year, but he was out of town and unavailable to receive the award. But his contributions have been so significant to Columbia that we felt it was very important to bring him back this May so he could publicly receive this award. And let me just tell you just a little bit about some of Dr. Bryan's achievements. He's a native South Carolinian who taught architectural history and other historic preservation courses at USC for over 30 years. He's the author of many books and publications that explore rehabilitation projects, including the South Carolina State House and the Biltmore Estate in Asheville. And most notably, for all of us here in the room, as well as for your preservation staff, he was the project director and author of the very important 1994 Citywide Architectural Survey and Historic Preservation Plan, from which Columbia adopted a number of recommendations that have guided historic preservation efforts for more than 2 decades. I can't emphasize enough what a pivotal document this is, and I should have brought it with me. I have a copy in my office so y'all could see how well worn it is, because we reference it frequently. Dr. Bryan served for 5 years on the city's Landmark Commission, now known as DDRC, and that alone should earn him an award, because we all know that that's a tough job. At any rate, Dr. Bryan's role in identifying potential historic districts and individual landmarks has led to the appreciation of Columbia's rich architectural history, and his work has been responsible for the preservation of so many buildings here. The City of Columbia is very honored to announce Dr. John M. Bryant as the recipient of the Mabel Paine Historic Preservation Award. Please join me in congratulating him.
Fantastic. Sure. And I think Dr. Bryant would tell you that and Dr. Bryant would tell you his beautiful wife Martha is here as well to celebrate in this award.
Let's give my wife a hand too. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mayor and council, at this time, I would ask Mr. Brian K. Husky, Executive Director of the Midlands Housing Trust Fund, to come forward for an update.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, thank you so much for the opportunity to come give you an update on what's happening with the Midlands Housing Trust Fund here in May 2016. We have done a whole lot of work in the last few years, and I want to give special thanks to the United Way of the Midlands, which birthed our organization, and the city was first to jump on board and help support it with moral support and financial support. And without all the work of all these organizations, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I want to give a special thanks to Mayor and Council and everybody on staff who has supported the cause of affordable housing. I know it's an important issue here in the city of Columbia. It has been a topic of a lot of discussion, and we were created to be part of the solution to the problem and the need for affordable housing. Our mission is simple. We provide financing and technical assistance and advocacy for the creation and preservation of affordable housing that's targeted for households at or below 80% of area median income. And to give you an idea of the scope of need that there is, an economic impact study that we commissioned last year that was done by Dr. Joey Von Nessen at the USC Darla Moore School of Business calculated that there are just in Richland and Lexington counties alone more than 90,000 households that are at or below 80% of area median income. That's a staggering number. So we're here to try to provide some solutions for that. We've done a whole lot with just a very few resources in just a few years. Since 2012, we have deployed more than $822,000 in financing that has leveraged more than $25 million in financing from other sources, and that has created or preserved 202 units of affordable housing in Richland and Lexington counties, most of which have been inside the city limits here in Columbia. Not only do we provide financing for affordable housing, but our efforts have an economic impact. And this was also quantified by Dr. Nessen in his study that was released in July of last year. Just through 2015, with the activities that we had done to that point, we were responsible for $4.8 million in economic impact annually, and that was just at the level of activity until 2015. That was also responsible for creating or sustaining 33 jobs, and that equated to $1.4 million in wages paid to Midland citizens. If you look at Dr. Von Nessen's study, the projected impact over the course of the next 5 years, he estimates that we will have more than $43 million of economic impact throughout the region over the next 5 years, and will be responsible for creation or preservation of more than 300 jobs. So that's in addition to creating housing opportunities for people who need it, it has a whole lot of ripple effects throughout the economy within the region. The most notable thing that we have achieved recently, a year ahead of our planned schedule, we have made our application to the United States Department of the Treasury to become a certified Community Development Financial Institution, a CDFI. And this took a whole lot of effort with a whole lot of people in a few years. Also, a month later after we submitted that application, we applied for a grant from the CDFI fund for $700,000, which doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, but let me tell you a little bit about what this could potentially mean for the city of Columbia. This brings potentially new resources to the city for affordable housing development. These are new resources. When you look at what the Community Development Department does, all great work. What the Housing Authority does, great work. State Housing, the bulk of what they do is financed by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This money from the CDFI fund from Treasury is money that is currently unavailable to the city of Columbia and to the region. So by becoming a certified community development financial institution, we will be able to bring a lot of new resources into the community. We will be the only housing-focused community development financial institution focused on the city of Columbia and the surrounding region. So again, the resources that we have the potential to bring to the city augment the great work that the Housing Authority does, that your Community Development Department does, and what the state does through the State Housing Finance and Development Administration. We have the potential to bring in not only grants from the CDFI fund, but as a certified community development financial institution, we become a very, very viable investment option for banks who are seeking Community Reinvestment Act credits, which is something they're obligated to do every year, and a very, very strong investment that they make is in CDFIs. We can also leverage program-related investments from foundations across the country that have an interest in affordable housing development. And this is the possibility of leveraging. For every dollar that the Midlands Housing Trust Fund has, we can leverage $7 from a variety of other sources. And that's a conservative estimate based on what similar sized CDFIs are doing across the country. So there is a potentially powerful leveraging opportunity that we can bring to the table as a result of this certification. Just as an example, if you look at a $500,000 investment in the Midlands Housing Trust Fund, a total aggregation of $3.5 million. We could save $500,000 in an annual grant from the CDFI fund itself, although if we have a local dedicated matching source, we can apply for up to $2 million annually. Banks, we think conservatively we can attract $1 million from banks in CRA-eligible credits, as well as what's called equity equivalent investments, which function as long-term loan capital that we then put into the community as loans for affordable housing. Foundations and corporations up to $1.5 million every year we can potentially leverage from a variety of corporations and foundations that have an interest in affordable housing development. Also, last year we were certified by the State Department of Commerce as a state-certified community development financial institution, which is different from the Treasury certification. The principal difference is that it makes us eligible. Any dollar that is contributed to the Midlands Housing Trust Fund is eligible for a 33% dollar-for-dollar tax credit under the South Carolina Community Economic Development Act. And that's a dollar-for-dollar credit, which is a really powerful incentive for individuals and corporations that are chartered here in South Carolina to make an investment in the Midlands Housing Trust Fund.
We've got to get that cap up, too. We've got to get the cap on those.
We're going to get that. We hope to get that cap up. That is definitely a policy agenda. We'd like to see that credit increased from 33% to 100%, $5 million annually funded in perpetuity. I work with Bernie Mazik with the South Carolina Association for Community Economic Development. That's high on our policy agenda, and it would be a great incentive for investments not only in the Midlands Housing Trust Fund, but in community development corporations and other CDFIs throughout the state.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a great opportunity. This year, as what the CDFI fund calls an emerging and certifiable community development financial institution, we were eligible to apply for the $700,000 cap without the dollar-for-dollar local match source. Going forward, we're going to need to have some local sources to match dollar-for-dollar what we request from the CDFI fund. There's a couple of different ways that this can be done. Jeff Palin assisted me in pulling together some numbers. In building permit fees in fiscal year 2014-15, there was a little over $2,260,000 that was generated from both permit fees and non-permit fees. A potential 6.5% add-on could generate $150,000 for the Midlands Housing Trust Fund, augmented by some other funds that could come from other sources within the city, could get us well on the way to that dollar-for-dollar matching requirement that the CDFI fund will have on us going forward. I know that the term interesting statistics is an oxymoron, and I won't bore you with a whole lot of statistics here this evening, but one number that has really stuck with me when we talk about affordable housing, in particular in the city of Columbia, 80% of area median income in Richland County for a single-person household is about $34,350, give or take. Our public safety officers, police officers, and firefighters, starting pay for those officers and firefighters is about $33,300, which means that the folks that put their lives on the line to serve and protect our community would be eligible for housing that the Midlands Housing Trust Fund could potentially create with the support of the city and other funders throughout the nation that are interested in this particular issue, which faces a lot of communities. We are very, very proud of the work that we have done. We project that we can do a whole lot more work given the right resources and the right opportunities. I am blessed to have a very, very supportive and energetic board of directors. Good staff behind me working with me, as well as a brain trust with the collegiality that we have with the other community development financial institutions here in the state of South Carolina, most notably the South Carolina Community Loan Fund and Community Works up in Greenville, which have both done great work, and we want to follow in their footsteps, and when we grow up, we hope we look as good and as big as they do. So I just want to thank you for all the support that you have given us so far. I hope you will take into consideration some ways that we can come up with a dedicated funding stream for the Midlands Housing Trust Fund that would not be subject to annual appropriations, that we can count on year after year, so we can be able to begin to leverage those resources that aren't available to the city, aren't available to anybody else around here. And with the support of the city, we can bring those resources and leverage those resources 7 times over, dollar for dollar. So thank you for your time this evening, and I'll take any questions.
Absolutely. Please, Mr. Duval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian, I've always been impressed with what y'all are doing with the Midlands Housing Trust Fund, and Mayor, I think that one of your announced goals is to get really heavily involved in affordable housing with the City of Columbia. I think the Midlands Housing Trust Fund is an underutilized tool that we have, and we need to find some ways to leverage some public funds through the Midlands Housing Trust to provide that affordable housing for the people that live, work, and play in the City of Columbia. You've got my whole support.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And without going long, and Brian and I, we shared some of these conversations before, and I've had conversations with all, if not almost all, of council and with staff, and I'm probably going to give Mr. Palin a heart attack right now, but he'll be all right. We have medical professionals nearby. I see our FA is in the room.
My CPR certification.
Our bond counsel is not in the room, but we've been talking about the idea of. I'm not going to go long. I promised Mo's out of the room. We thought we'd try to get out of here in 55 minutes today. It's not going to happen. We started a little bit late. We do need a dedicated funding source to lever up all these different tools that we have, whether they be the various tax credit programs, the wonderful work that you'll be doing, you're already doing, but you will be doing even more as a CDFI. Whether it's working with the 9% low-income housing tax credit or the 4% credit that historically has been underutilized, attacking that with the same creativity we attack the student housing challenge, finding a way to drive private sector capital into that space and making it profitable, recognizing that affordable housing is just being honest, a much higher public policy priority than student housing is. So how do we create an environment where we can make it attractive. And I'm not sure, I've talked with some folks and they've given me different numbers as to what type of subsidy or what type of equity contribution, it might be land or whatever it happens to be, with some very defined criteria as to what we want to see. We want to see mixed income. We want to see mixed use. We need it in all four corners of the city. We had an affordable housing shortage before October 4th of last year.
We
It
sure
will only grow significantly
Yeah.
between now and then. We have great development corporations that are doing great work. How can we lever that up with work that you're doing, as well as the banks and institutions like the Federal Home Loan Bank and others to really get things going? But one idea we chatted about briefly earlier today was even this idea of, Brent, of how do we, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, I hate saying things when Cliff's in the room, but this idea of having mini TIFs, ways in which you capture the new tax value of new investment, market rate investment, whether it be commercial or if it be residential or whatever it happens to be, but in some meaningful way to start driving some significant public sector improvements. And those public sector improvements can look like streetscaping or parks improvement, but some specifically designed, if legal, to create a pool of money that will be used exclusively to meet the needs of people who are 80%, and if legal, up to 120% of AMI. It's something, and these are ways. I mean, you capture the tax increment on a $40 million project, paying full freight 6%. I'm not sure if we're at 522 or 526 mils or so, but that's a significant amount of tax revenue, seven figures, that we can capture each year over a period. And if we use it year by year and choose not to bond it or whatever we want to do, there's some ways that, of course, it's going to require, depending on which tool we use, the consent of the county or the consent of the county and the school district as well.
Sure.
But it does create a dedicated source of revenue and a significant source of revenue that you can then use to lever. And I'd submit, we chatted, some of us briefly about this earlier. We need to go ahead and put those conversations in the public domain and try to find a way to drive what we know we need. We don't need dozens, and we don't need scores, and honestly, we don't need hundreds. We need thousands.
We do.
More units across this region. We're just going to go ahead and just throw these things on the table. So we're going to be coming back. I will tell you, Brian, you guys have been doing a great job.
Thank you.
With very limited resources, and we need to do a whole lot more to put some tools in play to make some things happen. And I feel pretty good about the leadership on council to make that happen, make it happen in short order. We got to get going.
One last thing to note, just when you mentioned mixed income, once we are certified as a CDFI, we are automatically eligible to become a community development enterprise, which would allow us to be direct recipient of New Markets tax credits, which could be used for all sorts of benefits for all sorts of activities throughout the city and stimulate the economy on levels that we can only imagine at this time. So I really appreciate the council's leadership on this, and I stand ready to help you figure out any way that we can to make this happen and keep moving the ball forward. So thank you for the
Look forward to
opportunity.
spending some time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have something, Tamika?
Yeah, not for Brian. I just, before we move on to the public hearing, we don't have a proclamation for it, but I did want to recognize that May is also National Bike Month. And John Fellows and I had the honor of participating in a webinar earlier today, sponsored by the U.S. Department of Transportation, National League of Cities, and the Association of, League of Bicyclists, John, League of Bicyclists. But anyway, to recognize the city, and I just wanted to say that it was an honor. We were invited to participate because of the city's efforts to coordinate our Let's Move efforts, our bicycle-friendly community efforts, and participation in the Mayor's Challenge for safer streets, safer people. So I just wanted to recognize that. We've had some transitions with BPAC because normally we do have a proclamation. And so since we reestablishing that committee and had so many changes in that committee, we don't have a proclamation today, but I didn't want to May to go by without recognizing it's National Bike Month.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Devine. All right. Now
Mr. Mayor?
I'm going to open the public hearing.
Thank you, sir. For the fiscal year 2016-2017 Annual Action Plan for Community Development, I know there's staff from the Community Development Department here to include Ms. Dolly Bristow and probably members of the committee that serves with our staff.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Ms. Wilson. My name is Dolly Bristow. I'm the CD Administrator for Community Development. On behalf of Ms. Deborah Christie, the Director of Community Development, I would like to introduce Mr. Tig Watts, who is the Chairman of the Citizens Advisory Committee, who will come and present the fiscal year 2016-17 Annual Action Plan draft.
Hey, Tig.
Good evening. How are you all doing?
Good evening.
It's my pleasure to be here, Mr. Mayor Benjamin, esteemed members of council. I do have to apologize in advance because when I first started doing these things 5 years ago, my eyesight was a lot better, so I kind of need some assistance, if you bear with me.
You're not alone, Tig.
Good, good.
It's called aging.
We won't talk about that. But anyways, we are here because the City of Columbia's Community Development Department has prepared the fiscal year 2016-2017 draft annual action plan, which represents the second year of the city's 5-year consolidated plan for 2015-2019. The action plan, as you all know, but for those that don't know, especially those that are viewing, is basically the City of Columbia's application to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for their entitlement grants and identifies the proposed programs and projects that will be funded during the city's fiscal year that begins in July. The city's action plan identifies how Columbia, working in collaboration with its partners, neighborhoods, and community stakeholders, will use these funds to address its community development, housing, and public service priorities as described in the executive summary, I believe, on page 6 in the packet you received. There are 3 HUD entitlement grants that are listed and covered in the action plan. The first I'd like to begin with is the Community Development Block Grant Funds. Many of us refer to it as CDBG. It totals $940,783. And the primary objective of this is the development of viable urban communities through improving living environments and expanding economic opportunities and decent housing. Funds are intended to serve low to moderate income residents in areas, eliminate slum and blight, and rectify an imminent threat of health and safety due to a disaster, which we'll talk about in just a second. CDBG activities included in this action plan address community development needs and unmet needs that address residents that were affected or impacted, especially by the 2015 flood disaster. For example, on page 49, I think we have a project summary. But one project we're particularly proud to recommend funding for is a program called Autos for Opportunities. And what that is, it's a program that, working in conjunction with the cooperative ministry, provides transportation to those of low to moderate income that may have lost their vehicle during the flood or as a result of the flood had to move further away from their places of work, which in turn caused hardships or barriers to employment. The second second fund we're applying, putting our application in for is the Home Investment Partnership Programs, or commonly referred to as HOME, and the amount of $428,829. And the HOME program is basically dedicated to increasing the availability as well as the access to affordable housing for low-income households. For more information about this, I refer you to page 56, I believe. Some of the activities include affordable housing loans, residential acquisition, rehab, and new construction. The third item that third grant is basically housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, otherwise referred to as HOPWA, and that amount that we are presenting for the action plan is $1,154,666, and I'm sure there's some cents after that. HOPWA funds may be used for a wide range of housing, social services, programs, planning, and development costs for the benefit of individuals living with HIV and AIDS and their families that reside within the Columbia metropolitan area. And that goes beyond just the city of Columbia, and specifically into areas like Calhoun, Fairfield, Kershaw, Lexington, Richland, and Saluda counties. Now, citizens have had the opportunity to provide input during the city's comment period, which began on April 10th of this year and will conclude on May 11th. In addition to tonight's public hearing, a public hearing was held on April 21st over at Spirit Communications Park, and minutes from that meeting are also available on the website. The action plan, along with citizens' comments, will also be submitted to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development prior to May 15th of this year, and all written public comments that were received have come through us through a variety of different means. People have emailed us at comdev@columbiasc.net. Some folks have faxed us by sending those to 803-255-8912. Some people have emailed Dolly Bristow at ddbristow@columbiasc.net, or they've even mailed it to us at the City of Columbia's Community Development Department. The fiscal year 2016-2017 Annual Action Plan Development Needs Assessment Survey and the Fair Housing Needs Assessment have also been available at the Community Development page on the City of Columbia's website. And for more information, we were referring folks to call the Community Development Department at 803-545-3373. If you'll indulge me with just a couple more seconds of personal observation, it's been my pleasure to serve on this committee because I've got the pleasure of serving with some great people who are committed to the well-being of Columbia. Those people in particular include David Jackson, Ursula Polaris, Pat Brown, Paige Moore, Walter Marks, and Dr. Anthony Morgan, who unfortunately has left our committee, but we have great things for him. And on behalf of the Citizens Advisory Committee, we'd also like to pay a special thanks to the entire Community Development Department, and most particularly the people we work with regularly, Ms. Deborah Christie, Ms. Dolly Bristow, and Joseph Dukes. That's your presentation in a nutshell. We've tried to keep it brief. We'll certainly open up to any questions as well as the public comments.
Mr. Davis?
Just one question. I was at the meeting at Spirit. What additional suggestions and recommendations have come to you since that? Anything?
Since that public hearing, we have not received any additional comments. We have received some surveys that were completed, needs assessment surveys, some fair housing surveys, but no additional comments that were in addition to what was made at that meeting.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? This is a public hearing. Is anyone here speaking on this item? Anyone else? All right. Fantastic. All right. None of this. Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say, I know that we got an email from Ms. Williams. Is that in the record that y'all are, okay.
That's on.
All right. Does it require action? Okay. All right.
All right.
Let's keep it moving.
Ordinance's first reading. Ordinance number 2016-031, ordinance granting consent to application for franchise for cable service and setting franchise fee to South Carolina Telecommunications Group Holdings, LLC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. McDowell? Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Bedora?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Mr. Mayor,
Next item.
Sam would be.
I know, I was going to see if he wanted to be here for this. I would like to make sure that council understands the Community Development Department will be moving forward with submitting the action plan. I think we've done it both ways. We either endorse that by taking formal action. I don't know that you really have to, but that really is the intent after the public hearing.
Okay.
So that's up to the
After
council.
After May 11th, when the comment period ends. Okay.
Right,
When
well,
the comment period ends on
after,
after May 11th, when the comment period ends,
they'll
then it'll be
move
submitted.
forward with submitting the action plan.
The action plan is submitted prior to May 15th. So after the comment period, we will submit.
Okay.
The lady you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to say something about the?
Not, it's about another item, Mr. Bedore, for the public comment period. Ordinance number 2016-032, annexing the Park Phase 4 and the Park Phase 5, 42.65 acres
So moved.
in Wood Creek Farms.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. McDowell? Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Bedura?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ordinance number 2016-033, annexing 1392 Beachfront Circle, 1388 Beachfront Circle, 1372, 1360, 1391, 1415, all Beachfront Circle Walkway.
That's a move.
So moved.
Thank
Yes, second.
you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McDowell? Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Bedura?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Ordinance number 2016-039, authorizing the city manager to execute a Seventh Amendment to purchase agreement between the City of Columbia and Bright Myers 2001 LLC for the sale of.
Moved by Ms.
capital
Bedore. Is there a
city
second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I just say something? I did have someone ask me, why do we keep extending this? This is a very complicated project, but we have worked a lot with this company. The neighborhood has worked with them, and it's going to be a good development. We just have to continue to move on, but I wanted to make sure that people knew it's a complicated project, but it is moving forward.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. McDowell? Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Bedura?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Item 19 for council discussion and action. I would ask Mr. Jaco to come forward to give council a very brief update on our rate study as you have been presented during our budget workshops. This water and sewer rate study recommendation that staff is presenting is the recommendation that I would seek council's endorsement of as we move forward with the budgetary process. Of course, this being a potential rate increase, there would be a public hearing associated with our budget process if council takes action tonight, one way or the other, with one of the scenarios as presented.
All right. We've got the presentation available from April 12th. Staff's recommendation is to move forward with scenario 2B. Mr. Chambers is here. If we weren't going to go through the whole presentation again, but we wanted to be able to answer any questions. Sorry.
All right.
Robert.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thanks for having me here.
Good to see you again.
What I would like to do today, just take a few minutes to refresh us about the scenarios, what we went through, and then we'll scroll to the financial forecast that has a brief outline of all the scenarios and the proposed scenario 2B. So previously we presented 3 capital improvement scenarios, three financial planning scenarios. Scenario 1, which had a capital improvement, a CIP of 120 million, 40 for water-related projects, 80 for sewer. Scenario 2, 140 million, 60 million for water, 80 million for sewer. And scenario 3, which would be 110 million, 30 for water, 80 million for sewer, okay? The approach that was taken was each scenario has 2 options. Option A being based on a 5-year financial plan. We've laid out what the rate increases are. The second option, which would be the B option, would say, we know we're looking at a holistic program and we're taking a programmatic approach to financing our obligations. What is the best option to smooth out these rate increases? To first of all, present the lowest potential impact to the customers and constituents you serve, but in doing so, making sure we can, meet our obligations over the forecast period. So moving to the financial plan. And we're not going to go through every single detail as listed here. But if we look at lines 1 through 5, we have just a listing of what the annual revenue increases would look like for the fiscal years FYO 17 through 21. Just a note, the item at hand today is related to FYO 17 and the proposed 2B scenario in FYO 17. Okay? Let me start there before we go on. Any questions, comments?
The recommendation is on 2B.
2B.
Correct.
Which we have,
Line 1, 2B, 4%. 4%.
And thank you. Mr. Chambers, it's important to note that you've made this presentation to council at least once. And so it's the third time? Yeah, so we've had a chance to consume it. Will this be available? Is it already available on the website for the public to also consume?
This presentation was linked to the April 12th
Fantastic.
minutes,
Okay.
and it's also linked to today.
Just to make sure. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Joey, is it also linked the list of CIP projects that you gave us?
We do not have that linked,
I
but
think
we
that's
can.
important for the public to see as well.
Yes, ma'am, we can put that. We typically, after we approve our CIP, we put it on the website, but we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
That will be prior to the public hearing or during the,
We can link it tomorrow.
okay.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
No,
Okay. Let's have a motion and discussion or discussion?
discussion.
All right.
I know we've had this discussion before, and I understand it should be another slide into projection revenue from current year to next year's, and then without the 4% increase, and then with the 4% increase. So would you put that up, please, if you can find it? So projection sales without the 4% increase.
Okay. So what this slide does, we just go about walking through FYO 16 revenues as they,
So I'm just looking at this. 2016 is 129,427. 2017 is 132,299.
correct,
That's without the 4%.
correct.
With the 4%, you're going up 10 million. That's a different slot than what I saw last time.
If you look at line 5 for FYO 17,
Right,
including the 4%, we're at 137,591.
right. Okay. I remember there were different numbers than that the projected revenue without the 4% was right about 9.5 million. With the 4% revenue or water rate increase is about 14.5 or 15 million. And I have to look at my slides and find it. And my question was, if you're generating about $10 million worth of revenue already without the water increase, why do you think we need to impose the 4% water rate increase?
Okay. So, fair, great question. So, looking at what you have at hand and taking this slide and what we have here, since we don't have all the details, with all due respect, as it relates to 10, 14 million. But you currently have a program which you're trying to fund. As a part of that program, you've encumbered monies to fund this program. So over the life of your capital plan, you have specific requirements that you have to meet. And the approach that's taken here is, in order to make sure that as a utility, you first and foremost maintain the level of service you provide to your customers, meet your policy and financial requirements that you've established. The approach we've taken is, while you may have a little bit of funds that are coming out in 1 year, we have to look at all the requirements over the life of the program. Because to create lumps and spikes, as we discussed in a few past presentations, the programmatic approach helps us to smooth out potential rate increases, so it creates the least impact over the life of the program on the customers you serve, and then in doing so, we responsibly fund the projects and the programs you have in place to maintain the level of service you provide to your customers.
That being said, since the last water rate increase we had last year, how much bonds, water and sewer bonds, have we issued this past year? Did we issue any bonds this past year? Yeah.
I don't remember off the top of my head. One second.
No, sir, the bonds are being issued this June in a month and a half.
So and once again, I know this is a touchy subject for me personally, more, you know, I don't want to say more than other person. But my point is, we went up on the water rate increases last year, telling everybody that we're going to issue a bond to increase our CIP projects because we have a commitment that we have to follow and we have to comply by. Although we've collected all this revenue and we still have not issued a bond, now we're asking for another water rate increase for the same reason, the same excuse to use and fulfill the commitment that we have with the federal government and the requirements that we have to beef up our infrastructure. So it seems like it's a revolving door that every year, we're going to go up on the water rates just because we need it, but we really don't spend the money and we don't want you, and there's no CIP. That's why it's so important for us to know the CIP projects that we need to vote on that we need to see and communicate with my district or other residents who's paying for that water rate increase. For that reason, I have second thoughts approving this 4% increase. I'm sure council is ready to move forward on that, but I have regrets to moving forward on that.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bedora. All right. Any other comments? All right. The motion?
I move we adopt the staff suggestion of a 4% rate increase for
Is there a second?
the budget.
Second.
With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. McDowell? Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Badura?
No.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
No.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. Now we'll close it out saying that we've made a commitment to building and rebuilding a first-class water and sewer system, and we're going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council, at this time, we would ask for any committee reports or motions to refer specific matters to a committee, council committee.
All right.
Seeing none, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the last meeting I referred, and I was looking and I couldn't remember the name of the technology, but I think it's called My Sidewalk. Instead of economic and community development, I think that's now more appropriate in the technology committee.
Okay. And I think we are planning for a GIS presentation to council. Have we set the date for that, Ms. Moore?
I was waiting to hear back, but
Yeah.
maybe.
I think it's going to it may have a bearing on
Yeah, 'cause
that.
I think our GIS department tried out this technology as well, is what the vendor told me, but I haven't. So that would be probably good to put them together.
Okay, and we'll probably do that for all of council, Ms. Devine, if that's okay. Because it's really neat and made some strides with some things linked to the website, and we wanted you make sure you all knew that. Depending on the timing of when that goes to your committee, it may, I guess you can let us know if you still need it.
Well, we can do the GIS presentation first because maybe
you very
that
much.
information and knowledge would be necessary
Okay.
before we see the My
Right.
Sidewalk presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any additional committee
No,
items?
I
Okay.
think we have one citizen who signed up to speak.
Yes, sir.
Buckhead Mobile Ads.
Thank you, Council.
Hey, how are you?
This afternoon with me. I have some handouts, if you would like to give them out. It's because it's technical and I don't have a PowerPoint, but I do have a lot of information for you.
We can handle technical.
Good, thank you. I was licensed last April the 9th to begin pedicab service in Columbia. And since that time, I'll just quickly go through the protocol I've been going through, just to update you. I spoke with Mr. Roger Myers in business licensing, And then I also spoke with the city traffic police officer, Derek Miller, about getting the bikes tagged or stickered. I've spoken with 2 different members of the South Carolina Department of Motor Vehicle. The last person I spoke with in that division being Sharon Madison. Then I was referred to legal Philip Porter. And I apologize that the pedicab service is not on the street yet. I feel like we've gotten bogged down in some bureaucracy maybe, or getting rerouted to different departments. But the handout that you were just given refers to federal law, which allows the service of my vehicles being a 2- or 3-wheel bike. Ironically, it's National Bike Month. And I would love to be able to operate the pedicab service in Columbia. It would help our students. It would help our sports fans, our business leaders, our senior citizens, and our young families with children in the community. About 10 years ago, there was a study done to see how we could improve mobility in the downtown area. And I know we're losing a lot of parking spaces to further development of our city. And I just feel like that this would be a great add now to the city. And I'm at a point now, I just feel like I need your blessing. It looks as if, according to the most recent email we received from legal, that there's nothing further that we need to do as a commitment.
Sure. It's good to see you again. Good to see you again.
Thank you very much. And I also have business cards I would love to share with you. Since our initial meeting, have developed an app that everyone can use on their smartphone. So if you're staying in one of our local hotels, if you are at a restaurant, and I'm not sure where you're located, if you're a young woman who is leaving the library late one evening and wants a lift home, all you have to do is touch the app, and we are able to locate you. You'll get a picture of our driver, and you'll be picked up promptly. So that's the direction we want to go with premium service. I provide the service now in Georgia, and this is my hometown. My son starts to law school in the fall, and this is my baby. I want to get it up and running, and I feel like, it's been dragging on for quite some time now, and I just need your guidance, how to get it off the ground.
Sure, and I'm not sure if this, I don't see Teresa Knox. There you are, back there. If this is something we talk about in executive session or not, but I know the last conversation I had with staff, there was some inconsistency with state DMV or DOT or whoever it happened to be regarding electric vehicles and the determination they might be motor vehicles. Where are we with that? Is that something you can speak freely on?
The last update I have, that we still have the same issues that we reported on last time. So I think when she mentioned she speaks to legal, it's not our legal department, it's some other legal department.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
It was the person with the South Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles is Sharon Madison. She's Deputy Director of Customer Service Delivery with the Department of Motor Vehicles. Then she referred the conversation to Philip Porter. And the last thing we received from Ms. Madison was her once again requesting a determination by Mr. Porter, but according to federal law, we really shouldn't be held up from operating within the city. And that's why I wanted to include the manual for the pedicab so that it clearly states that we should be able to operate. I've had a business license. I've also had an advertising license, which was issued last April, and I've not been able to operate. And I requested to have that license reissued, and I haven't been given authorization to do so.
recommended course of action, Madam City Manager. Is there any way we can, I'm not sure if you're comfortable getting legal advice, maybe,
We were waiting to get clear from DMV, and so what I'm hearing is it's still not clear through DMV. She's saying that federal law says one thing and DMV says that. We have to get clearance from DMV.
can you spend some time this week, maybe engaging DMV and seeing exactly where they are, and see if you can get some clear declaration from them or not, and have a chance to talk about the executive session on Tuesday?
Sure.
All right. Is that fair enough for you? All right.
According to that last email
Yes,
that you
ma'am.
sent, it basically states that they don't need to be registered, they don't need to be tagged.
Sure.
So that leaves that very open-ended, and my interpretation is we've come to the conclusion that we should be operating.
Well, the challenge is we can't have it open-ended, and we can't just come to that conclusion based on the email. So let's get some clarity, and we'll put a bow on this next week, Tuesday.
Can I leave these?
Absolutely.
cards with you
Absolutely.
guys?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Would you like me to give them to you, or should I just?
Yeah, City Manager.
Give them to staff. Mayor, I'd like
But thank you, and but let's see if we can deal with this. If we need policy decision, or if it's, I'm not sure what federal laws or state laws, but let's get some clarity and just decide one way or the other if, in fact, we even have the authority to do so on Tuesday. All right, based on these emails. that have been
Sure. If we get any clarity of, with legal and working with Ms. Tatum, we will have those communications with her. Mr. Mayor, your next executive session is scheduled for the 17th. May 10th is a budget
Okay, well,
workshop.
that's fine.
So is
Yeah.
that
So
okay?
whenever the
Okay.
next exec
Okay.
session is.
Thank you.
Mr. Badura, you had something?
I have a recommendation for Public Safety Committee. Since you brought that up with the, I had a discussion or a conversation with one of the Five Points merchants about the mopeds. It's an issue for vehicles not to see the mopeds. A lot of times the mopeds are not paying attention to traffic laws. And he was wondering if we can impose some kind of a flag or some kind of a tag that is noticeable in a vehicle rather than being too low.
Mayor Benjamin has been on a ride down Main Street in the Pedicab.
But I'm not
And
talking about
he's
you.
not talking about
I'm
yours.
not talking
He's-
about you. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I was just gonna
You
say
just
you can't
triggered my
miss the
memory.
vehicle.
Why are you putting my
You
business
just
in the
triggered
street?
my memory.
It was
That was a year
it
ago,
was a wonderful experience, and we just want to make sure. And I mean, I love the Jelly Bean pedicabs. You have to make sure that we really, with all the issues of liability, that we cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's. We'll do
And
that.
I do have a $2 million insurance policy on my vehicles. I am a mother, so I have headlights, I have 2 sets of taillights and a horn, and they're very brightly colored. So we will do everything we can to satisfy the city.
And Ann, I'm not talking, I'm sorry.
He was talking about
I wasn't-
mopeds.
I'm
He was
just
talking about mopeds.
Period, not just
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Everybody else, yeah.
Thank you.
So anyway, so that's my, my reference to public.
What's that again, Ma?
So I like for the Public Safety Committee to discuss of imposing a flag on all mopeds around the city limit.
He wants to refer that to the Public Safety Committee.
Okay.
Right.
That's it, yes.
All right. This motion by Mr. Badura, who seconded?
Second?
All right.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Send it to committee.
Oh, send it to a committee.
He wants to.
Technology committee?
No, to
I'm
the
not
Safety
sure. I'm
Committee.
not sure if flags qualify as technology. With the previous question, clerk call a roll.
Mr. McDowell? Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Badura?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
I have a non-debatable motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Move the previous question, clerk call a roll.
Mr. McDowell? Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Badura?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis? Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Have a good evening.
Hey, man, we tried.